Hey, so I just wanted to make a quick video, which is a response to a video Rick Beato recently posted on his Rick Beato 2 channel. And it was regarding getting your chops together quickly after a layoff if you have a gig coming up. But first, full disclosure, I know Rick personally as a kind of contemporary here in the Atlanta music scene. Met him a couple times. I've been over to his studio a couple times prior to him starting his YouTube journey. I recorded a bass track at a studio for, I can't remember what the project is, but I've played bass for a couple artists that he previously recorded, Owen Beverly and Marion Dean. And we have mutual friends, Dave Honorado, and a guitar player who's been on Rick's channel a couple times, and Ren Vincent. So I'm not, while this appears like I might be trying to jump onto his coattails, which maybe in a small way I am by tagging him in this video or making this a response video, really it's coming from a place of, I've had this idea that, or tip I wanted to share for a long time for this exact use case. So the fact that he made this video yesterday on his Rick Beato 2 channel, where he's in this situation, and this is the exact use case of the tip I wanted to talk about. So what he was talking about is after a layoff, because it's only natural that if you play an instrument or any kind of other activity that you would pursue over a long period of time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, if you've been playing guitar or another instrument for that long, there's going to be seasons where you put it down for a while or you don't play as much, whether that's because you get busy or you get other hobbies. Like for a while I got really into mountain biking and I wasn't really playing as much, or maybe you get burnt out on it. And this is healthy. It's good to have layoffs because, as most people will attest, when you come back after a layoff, you'll kind of see the instrument in a fresh perspective sometimes, or approach it in a slightly different way. So it's only natural that over a long period of time, you're going to have seasons where you don't play as much. So it's very common, especially as a professional player, that you may have a gig coming up where maybe it's the other players on the gig, their skill level or the type of music you're playing, maybe it's a little bit more challenging, and you find yourself in a situation where you have to quickly get your chops together and kind of lubricate your skill. And over time, I have found a really good method for this, what does it the best. But first, what Rick was proposing is also a very good idea. In his video on his Rick Beato 2 channel, he was kind of talking about various ideas, like harmonic ideas to cover arpeggios and, coming up. Because your options are really, this is what I've tried in the past, in the very distant past. If I was in this situation, the first go-to would just be like digital exercises, like non-musical digital exercises to try to get the physicality together as quick as possible. And then you could kind of go beyond to kind of having more musical language-based ideas, certain harmonic ground that you might need to cover. But just to skip to the tip here, the most powerful way I found to get your chops together quickly is reading etudes or reading music. And now some people will immediately click off because they're adverse to music reading. And that's a separate video I've been also wanting to make about the benefits of being able to read music, which is not just the communicative factor. For instance, like this is part of the video I'll eventually make, but if you consider music to be a language, think about whatever language you speak, which in most cases is going to be English. What if throughout your life you only learned that orally and you couldn't read or write English? You'd be at a severe limitation as to the amount of information you could take in or communicate. In fact, you would rely on other people to verbally tell you stuff about the world for your information input. You would be restricted on hearing people tell you about the world rather than being able to read information about the world. That same thing applies to music, but that's not the only reason to learn to be able to read music, which really, part of the other video I'll make about reading is that it only takes 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. It's about consistently rather than a marathon sprint to try to learn to read it as quick as possible. It's just a touchstone that you get to 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. So it's not a big deal to learn to read. But there's many other benefits that come in with reading. But in this particular use case where you need to quickly get your chops together, nothing I have found does it better than reading some type of etude material or some type of material because of what it forces you to kind of get together all at the same time. Now, in my case, most of the time this is on bass that I need to quickly lubricate my chops. And I have a couple books that I've always used. This is a standard etude for upright string bass, concert bass. It's just etudes in bass clef. But for your use case, whether it's guitar or any other instrument, you're looking for just any musical material that's in the tessitura of your instrument, the functional range of your instrument. That's really all you're looking for. It can be anything. So for guitar, a lot of times piano music is going to be sufficient. Sometimes you may want to get violin music. But for bass, these are typically, I can't show this first page because it has my old phone number on it, which isn't my phone number anymore in case it comes through on camera. But this book, actually, let me just cover it with my hand. One of my favorite books. I got this book when I learned to play trombone. It's called Melodious Etudes for Trombone, and it's taken from the Vocalises of Marco Bordogni, an Italian opera singer and teacher. And a vocalise is a vocal etude where their opera singers are practicing only singing on vowels. But anyway, this is a very common universal book for trombone. And it's these melodious exercises or etudes originally written for voice for trombone. I'll usually play out of that. Here's another one I really like for 40 Progressive Studies for trombone. This is one I use a lot. You can't go wrong with Bach. If you have to get your chops together quickly, getting into some Bach, which it covers the harmonic gambit of anything you would want to see. But the approach is number one, when you're reading, what it kind of forces you to get everything together at the same time, the amount of processing that your brain is having to do, because your eyes are focused on the music, not the instrument. So it forces you to develop a mental map in your mind, which we all have. But after a period of layoff, you really want to lubricate that mental map. So no matter what you're doing, if you have to do big skips on the guitar or bass where you're jumping up, but you're not looking at what your target is, reading music is what will get you there faster than anything else because it immediately forces that. You have to keep your eyes on the music. You can't look at the fretboard. So even though it may seem intuitive that you want to look at the fretboard for accuracy to get your fingers in the exact right spots, you can also do that via a mental map in kinesthetics or proprioception. And that's really what you want. Music reading is what does that. There's nothing else that will give you the blindfold aspect of being able to play and have complete proprioception and a mental map of the entire fingerboard than reading music. That's the primary thing. But there's something else that it does. Because really what we're talking about when you're trying to get your chops together after a layoff is these micro instances in little sync problems that start to creep up if you don't play a lot, like syncing between the left and right hand. If you're playing a stringed instrument, you have your attack hand, the picking hand, or the plucking hand, and then the fretting hand. When your chops get rusty, what is happening is little asynchronous aspects between those two hands. You want to link them up and get them synced Nothing else does that like reading music, reading etudes. The third reason this is so powerful, and this is the main point that I found why this is so powerful, is that in the case of giving yourself either digital exercises or like harmonic exercises like arpeggios and scales and stuff to work on, is that the content, the material is coming from your own mind. So you're having to think about what that content is or decide on the content, and then you're practicing through the content. Now, there's a couple drawbacks I could get into about. In that case, you're practicing content that you kind of already know, you just want to get lubricated on, and that's not bad. These are all good ideas, but here's the power of choosing to read music. And this is if you like, you have a couple days to get your chops together. This will work, assuming you can read. And if you can't read, you should start now, and I'm going to make a separate video on that. But here's a perfect example, because long ago, this is back in the 90s, I electrical taped the tab to get myself to read. I don't need to do that now. I would never try to read tab, because while I've never had to use reading, I use it 1% of the time in across recording sessions or gigs I've had to do. Rarely do I ever need it, but I'm getting into the other video about music reading now. Here's the most powerful practice. Reading an etude provides the musical content as a vehicle, and then what you work on, like let's take 40 Progressive Studies. I'm trying not going to show my old phone number. You have an etude, okay? You use that as a vehicle, and what you do is exaggerate your dynamics, like beyond what is musically usually practically appropriate for the difference between pianissimo and fortissimo. You really kind of exaggerate your dynamics, exaggerate the spectrum in between dynamics, your touch. You focus on playing the material as lightly as possible, as heavy as possible, and then scaling in between the spectrum, in between those in your phrasing. You exaggerate articulation and things like that. So the most powerful reason to read music when you need to quickly get your chops together is to have an inbuilt content that's musical. It's harmonically relevant. It's melodically relevant. It's getting together aspects in your system that normally wouldn't be touched, like the need to focus visually on something while having a mental map and then synchronizing all the factors. But most conveniently, it provides musical content that you can use as a vehicle to kind of exaggerate the aspects of your technique that you want. For instance, you don't just want to play fast, you want to be limber and relaxed while you're doing that. Well, you can focus on that while using the vehicle of whatever you're reading. And I'm talking about you read it down 5 or 6 times, front to back, over and over, while focusing on these parameters that you really need to work up. Your dynamics, staying relaxed, articulation, legato phrasing, staccato phrasing. The music acts as a vehicle to kind of exaggerate those musical expression parameters. And there's no other way I found to quickly get your chops together. So that's a tip I wanted to share. Soon, at some point, I'm going to make a video about the benefits of reading music, because it's not just to communicate musical information. There's other benefits, like those physical benefits that come from reading music. But that's a separate video. So I hope this is helpful. Shout out to Rick for making a great video and for to keep up the great work in 2026. It's a really enjoyable channel, and it's really amazing to see what he's done. But I wish everybody a great 2026, and I will see you on the flip side. All right, thanks. Bye.